In this lesson, we'll finally start adding some user input. So we'll allow the user to swap candies, and so far we have checks for chains, but we don't have checks for consecutive chains. So for example, if you change something and there's a chain, and then there should be more updates and more chains happening, they are not happening for the time being, but that's something that we'll add later. So for now, I just wanted you to focus on the swapping and on how with the touch or the mouse we'll make that happen. The way it's gonna work is that you click one first and then you click the other one, and that makes them swap. So that's used in games such as games like this, such as Zookeeper, for example, for Android and iOS. That's a really big match 3 game that it's done like that, where you touch one, touch the other, and they swap. So in game.js, let's add a new method called pick block, and which will receive as a parameter the block object. But now, where is this going to be called at all? You need to open block.js, and when we initiate this object, we need to listen for input on it. So this.input enabled equals true, and this.event.onInputDown.add state.pickBlock, and we need to pass in the context, which in this case is the state, this.state. Inside of this method, you want this to refer to the state. So now if we go back to the state, now we have that, and we can continue adding this aspect. So we have to check whether the board is blocked or not. So whether the user interface is blocked or not. That's the first thing we want to check. So we only swap if the UI is not blocked. So if this dot is board blocked, then there's nothing to do. We'll just return. You don't go any further. But and then now we can do the selection. So the first time you select an object, the first one you select, and there's the first one you select, and then the second one you select, and that's when the swap takes place. So the first one you select is the one that we'll do first. So if there's nothing selected, if we'll call this dot selected block, that's how we'll keep track of what was selected. So if that doesn't exist, then we're gonna highlight the first block, the one that you're just touching. Block.scale.set to 1.5. That will be our way of selecting the blocks. It will be by making it look a bit bigger to draw more attention, like this. Then we keep that as the selection. So this dot selected block is now no longer undefined, but it's equal to block. So that happens at first. Then what if you already selected something? Only adjacent blocks can swap. Remember that we added this check for adjacent methods a while ago. So what we need to keep is both of them, right? So selected block will be the first block, and then target block, the second one, the second block you are selecting is target block. This dot target block equals block, and only adjacents can be swapped, as I mentioned. So let's check for that. So if this dot board dot check adjacent, that's a method we implemented earlier in the course, earlier in the module. blocks. So we swap selected block and we swap target block. We need a method to clear the selection. So if this doesn't go well, or when this finishes, we need to be able to unlock the UI and so forth. So we need this method I'm going to call clear selection, which is something that's commonly used, so that we reset the board is no longer blocked and selected block is now null. That will do for now. So if in this case, if the blocks were not adjacent, you would have just cleared the selection. This dot clear selection. Also, when you clear the selection, you want to set the scales to 1. So you want to do this dot blocks dot set all. That allows me to change a property for all the blocks in a group, all the elements in a group. Scale dot x is set to 1, and also scale dot y is set to 1. So this should be enough. Let's take a look, and I'm gonna remove that initial swapping that was hard coded from before. So we no longer need that. Let's take a look. So I can touch one now and I can change it. As you can see, there are obviously things that need to be still addressed, but we've got that ready. 148 THS is not defined. Oh, this. So for example, if I click on one and they click on it again, that's not adjacent, so there's no swapping. If I do this one, for example, there's no swapping. But if I do click on one that's next to it and there's no change, they go back. But as you can see, the UI is now blocked and this never got resized. So we need to also add a clear selection part in our swapping. So whenever we swap, there needs to be as well the possibility to unlock the UI. So when the reversing, for example, is set to false, then it needs to be unlocked. Also, when the swapping starts, we no longer want the block 1 to be big. So the scale is set back to 1 when it's moving. So when swapping, scale block 1 back to 1. So now for failed interactions, it's all working fine. Also, when you click on a not adjacent one, that's all working fine. The part that still needs some issues, is when it does work. So we need to work a bit further on the updating and also release the user interface. To summarize, we have now the ability to pick candies. When you pick on one, if it's the first one you're picking, it grows, and then you can pick a second one. If the second one is not adjacent, then it just goes back to normal and we clear the selection and you can do another move. But if, on the other hand, it is actually adjacent, then you get to check whether there's chains or not. So if there are no chains, in this case, for example, there's no chains, it gets reversed, everything back to normal, you can continue. If it does make a chain, then the view is updated and there are a few more things that we need to take care of.